300 years ago, the sky above Seoul burned red with alien fire. Commander Jiho watched from his bunker as the last of humanity's great cities crumbled into ash and dust. The sounds of screaming had stopped hours ago. Now there was only silence and the steady hum of enemy ships overhead. The war had lasted 5 years, but everyone knew it would end like this. Humanity had been too proud, too confident. They thought they could stand against 3 of the galaxy's greatest powers. They were wrong. The Kalari Empire came first. Their golden ships appeared in Earth's sky like angry suns, blocking out the real sun with their massive hulls. The Kalari looked like tall, thin humans, but with skin that shimmered like metal. They had ruled the galaxy's eastern arm for 1,000 years. To them, humans were just another young race that needed to learn their place. The Nox Collective arrived next. They were different from the Kalari. The Nox shared one mind among millions of bodies. Each Nox soldier was connected to every other through invisible mental links. They moved as one, thought as one, and killed as one. Humans had never faced anything like them before. Last came the Vel Republic. The Vel were traders and diplomats, but they brought the largest fleet. They looked almost like giant insects with 4 arms and compound eyes that saw everything. The Vel believed in order above all else. Humans, with their chaos and emotions, threatened that order. Jiho remembered the day the war started. He had been a young lieutenant then, stationed on Titan base near Saturn. The human government had refused to accept the galaxy's demands. They wanted humans to stop expanding, to stay in their small corner of space, to never again challenge the established powers. "We are free beings," President Kim had declared to the Galactic Council. "No one will cage humanity in our own solar system." Those words had sealed their fate. The alien fleets struck every human world at once. Mars fell in 6 hours. The Jupiter. Colonies lasted 2 days. The outer settlements simply vanished, their signals cut off mid-transmission. Earth's mighty defense fleet, the pride of humanity, was destroyed before it could even form battle lines. Jiho had fought in the Battle of Luna. He watched thousands of human ships charge bravely into certain death. The enemy weapons were beyond anything humans understood. Kalari energy beams passed through human shields like they were not there. Nox mind weapons turned human crews against each other. Vel ships moved in perfect formation, their combined firepower overwhelming any defense. The human ships exploded in beautiful, terrible flowers of light. Each explosion was someone's brother, sister, parent, or child. Each death was another piece of humanity's future burning away. But the worst part was not the dying. It was the surviving. After the fleets were destroyed, after the colonies were taken, after Earth itself was conquered, the aliens did something unexpected. They did not kill all humans. Instead, they scattered the survivors across the galaxy, like seeds in the wind. Some became slaves in Kalari mines. Others were sent to work farms on distant worlds. Many were simply loaded onto old cargo ships and told to find somewhere else to live. "Let them wander," the Kalari ambassador had said. "Let them see what happens to races that challenge their betters." Jiho was one of the scattered ones. He found himself on a refugee transport ship called the New Dawn, heading toward the galaxy's outer rim. The ship was old and crowded. 5,000 humans packed into spaces meant for 1,000. They had little food, less hope, and no idea where they were going. On the transport, Jiho met others like himself. Captain Minna had lost her entire family in the bombardment of Tokyo. Engineer Dong-sik's wife and children had been on Mars when it fell. Teacher Yoon-ju still carried lesson plans for students who would never grow up. They were all broken people from a broken world. But in the darkness between stars, something strange happened. The scattered humans began to find each other. The refugee ships, scattered across hundreds of worlds, started sending secret messages. They shared information, resources, hope. Slowly, quietly, they began to plan. Not for immediate revenge. That would be suicide. But for something longer, deeper, more patient. The galaxy thought it had solved the human problem. They built museums on the ruins of human cities. They told stories of how the proud, violent humans had been humbled and scattered. Tourist groups visited Earth to see the burned remains of humanity's greatest achievements. Ambassador Vex of the Kalari often brought visitors to the Sol Memorial. "Look at this place," he would say, pointing at the melted buildings and empty streets. "This is what happens when a young race refuses to know its place." Humans thought they were special. They thought they could challenge us. Now they are nothing but a warning to others. But Vex was wrong about one thing. Humans were special, just not in the way they had first thought. Their strength was not in their weapons or their courage. It was in their ability to adapt, to survive, to learn from their mistakes. In the outer rim, in hidden places beyond the galaxy's sight, the scattered humans were doing more than just surviving. They were changing. They were becoming something new, something their enemies would not recognize when they finally returned. The galaxy had watched humanity fall. Soon, it would learn what rose from those ashes, and it would not be the same humanity that had fallen 3 centuries before. Intelligence Officer Kang Min sat in his small room aboard the refugee ship New Dawn, staring at reports that made no sense. 300 years had passed since humanity's defeat, and most of the galaxy had forgotten they ever existed. But Kang Min remembered everything. The reports came from across the outer rim where human refugees had been scattered like dust in the wind. Mining Station Omega-7 had gone silent 3 days ago. All 200 workers simply vanished. No distress calls, no signs of struggle, no bodies. The station's computers still ran normally, but there was nobody left to run them. Kang Min marked the location on his hidden star map. Omega-7 was only 50 light-years from where the transport ship Hope's End had been sent 200 years ago, carrying 15,000 human refugees. That could not be a coincidence. More reports followed. The pirate fleet known as the Crimson Blade had disappeared near the Void Nebula. These were not weak pirates. The Crimson Blade had terrorized trade routes for decades with 12 heavy warships. Nobody just made 12 warships vanish. Trade convoy Delta 9 reported strange ships following them for 3 days before they lost contact. The convoy captain's last message was confused and frightened. "Ships that don't show up on our screens. They look human, but that's impossible. All humans are dead or slaves." On the Kalari homeworld, Director Zal of Galactic Security reviewed similar reports with growing worry. His office was in a tall tower that overlooked the capital city of Nexar Prime. Through his window, he could see millions of Kalari going about their daily lives, never thinking about the humans they had helped destroy centuries ago. "Random accidents," his assistant Moore said, placing another stack of reports on Zal's desk. "Equipment failures, pirates fighting other pirates, nothing unusual." But Zal was not convinced. He had studied human history before the war. Humans were survivors. They adapted to anything. 300 years was a long time for a species like that to stay hidden and quiet. The breakthrough came when the Nox patrol ship Unifier went missing. The Nox never lost ships. Their hive mind connection meant that every Nox knew what every other Nox was thinking. If a Nox ship was in trouble, the entire collective would know instantly, but the Unifier simply stopped existing. One moment it was patrolling the outer rim, the next it was gone. No explosion, no debris, no final thought shared with the collective. It was as if the ship and its crew of 50 Nox had been erased from reality. 3 hours later, a single message reached Nox Central Command. It was the voice of Commander Yex, the Unifier's captain, but something was wrong with the transmission. The voice was filled with an emotion the Nox rarely felt: terror. "The humans," the message said, crackling with static. "They're back, but they're not the same. They're not the same at all. They know things. They can do things. How do they know? Our weaknesses? How do they know what we fear most?" The message ended with screaming. Then nothing. Captain Hai Jin listened to the intercepted Nox transmission from her hidden base, deep in an asteroid field. She smiled, but it was not a happy smile. It was the smile of a predator that had been hiding in tall grass, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. The base around her was carved from solid rock, invisible to any scanner. Thousands of humans lived here, but they were not the same humans who had fled Earth centuries ago. These Humans had spent 300 years learning, changing, becoming something new. Yejin had been born in the darkness between stars. She had never seen Earth's blue sky or felt real sunlight on her face. All she knew was the cold metal of hidden bases and the burning desire for revenge that every human child learned with their first words. "Report," she said to the technician at the communications station. "Phase 1 is proceeding as planned," the technician replied. His name was Sung Ho, and like everyone else in the base, he had been trained from birth for this moment. 17 targets eliminated in the past month. No survivors, no evidence left behind. The galaxy's powers are starting to notice, but they don't understand what they're seeing. "Good," Heejin said. "Fear is the first step. They need to remember what it feels like to be afraid." In another part of the galaxy, Admiral Minsu received reports from dozens of hidden human bases. Each base was a small city carved from asteroids, hidden moons, or empty space itself. Millions of humans lived in these secret places, all of them working toward the same goal. The humans had learned patience during their 3 centuries in exile. They had also learned cruelty. The galaxy had taught them that mercy was weakness, that honor was foolishness, that only the strong survived. The humans had been excellent students. "Are our people ready?" Minsu asked his staff. "More than ready," replied his second-in-command Colonel Taeho. 300 years of preparation, 300 years of anger. Our children have been raised on stories of what the galaxy did to us. They know exactly what needs to be done." Minsu nodded. The time for hiding was almost over. Soon the galaxy would remember why they had been so afraid of humanity in the first place. But this time, the humans would not make the same mistakes. This time they would not fight with honor. They would fight to win. The whispers in the dark were getting louder. Deep in the void nebula, where no star charts showed any worlds, New Terra spun silently in the darkness. The planet looked dead from space, just another cold rock floating in the empty void. But beneath its surface, millions of humans lived and worked in vast underground cities that stretched for thousands of miles. Admiral Minsu stood on the command deck of the warship Vengeance, watching his fleet prepare for launch. But these were not the same kinds of ships that humanity had built 3 centuries ago. The old human ships had been built for honor, for fair fighting, for showing the galaxy that humans were civilized and noble. Those ships had all burned. The Vengeance was different. Its hull was black as space itself, covered in materials that bent light around the ship like water flowing around a stone. Enemy sensors could not see it. Enemy weapons could not target it. It was a ghost ship, invisible and deadly. "Status report," Minsu said to his bridge crew. Captain Haijin looked up from her station. Like everyone else on the ship, she had been born in the hidden cities of New Terra. She had never seen Earth's blue skies, but she had been raised on stories of what the galaxy had done to her people. Her pale skin and thin body showed the effects of growing up without sunlight, but her eyes burned with purpose. "All ships ready, Admiral," she reported. 300 vessels in the first wave, each one invisible to enemy detection. Each one carrying weapons they have never seen before. Minsu nodded. The human fleet was not large compared to the massive armadas of the galaxy's great powers. But size was not everything. The humans had learned to fight smart instead of fair. Engineer Dong-sik activated the ship's main weapon system. It looked nothing like the laser cannons and missile tubes of old human warships. Instead, it was a complex array of transmitters and processors that could reach into enemy ships and turn their own systems against them. "Conversion beams online," Dong-sik reported. "We can take control of any Kalari ship within range. Their own weapons will fire on their own people, and they won't be able to stop it." This was what 3 centuries of preparation had created. The scattered humans had not just survived in the outer darkness. They had studied their enemies, learned their weaknesses, and developed weapons specifically designed to exploit those weaknesses. The Kalari were proud of their advanced technology, but that technology could be turned against them. The Nox relied on their hive mind connection, but humans had learned to disrupt that connection and drive individual Nox insane with isolation. The Vel valued order above all else. So humans had created chaos weapons that could turn their perfect formations into deadly confusion. "Sir," Communications Officer So Young called from her station, "we're receiving reports from our agents throughout the galaxy. Phase 2 is ready to begin." Min-Su smiled, but it was not a kind smile. It was the smile of someone who had waited 300 years for revenge and was finally about to get it. The agents So Young mentioned were humans who had been living in enemy territory for generations, pretending to be loyal slaves and refugees. They worked in enemy factories, enemy governments, enemy military bases. For centuries they had been patient, helpful, and invisible. The galaxy's powers had forgotten they existed. That was about to change. "Begin the revelation," Min-Su ordered. Across the galaxy, things began to go wrong for the three great powers all at once. On the Kalari homeworld, the planetary defense grid suddenly activated and pointed its weapons at the planet's own cities. The computers had been programmed by human slaves decades ago, with hidden commands that waited patiently for the right signal. In Nox space, the collective's communication network began broadcasting strange signals that broke the mental links between individual Nox. For the first time in their species' history, Nox began to think as individuals instead of as part of the group. The experience drove many of them mad with fear and loneliness. The Vel Republic's perfect trade routes collapsed as their cargo ships began delivering the wrong goods to the wrong places. Food meant for wealthy core worlds ended up on poor outer colonies. Weapons shipments disappeared entirely. Medical supplies were replaced with empty boxes. The chaos spread like a disease through their carefully ordered society. But the most shocking revelation came when the human fleet finally showed itself. For 3 centuries, the galaxy had believed that humans were broken, scattered, barely surviving on the edges of civilized space. They thought humans were a defeated people with no ships, no weapons, and no hope. Director Zal of Kalari Security watched in horror as his orbital sensors detected the approaching human fleet. But the readings made no sense. The ships appeared and disappeared like ghosts. When his forces tried to target them, the weapons refused to fire. When they tried to communicate with their own ships, they found that humans were already in control. "How is this possible?" Zal whispered, staring at the tactical display. "We destroyed them. We scattered them across the galaxy. They should be extinct." His assistant Moore was pale with fear. "Sir, we're receiving a transmission from the human fleet." Admiral Min-Su's face appeared on the screen. He looked nothing like the defeated refugees who had fled Earth centuries ago. His eyes were cold and calculating, his expression carved from stone. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of 300 years of patient hatred. "We are not the humans you remember," he said calmly. "You destroyed those humans. What you see before you now is what you created when you tried to exterminate us. We learned your lessons well. Now class is in session." The Second Galactic War began without a single shot being fired. Admiral Dex of the Kalari Home Fleet watched in complete horror as his own ships turned their weapons toward his command vessel. Every screen in his bridge showed the same impossible sight. 200 Kalari warships, the most advanced in the galaxy, now pointing their guns at each other and at the planet below. "This cannot be happening," Dex whispered, his golden skin turning pale. "Our security systems are perfect. No one can hack our ships." But the weapons were already charging. The massive energy cannons that had once burned Earth cities were now aimed at Kalari cities, and there was nothing Dex could do to stop them. Commander So Young's voice came through every speaker on every Kalari ship at once. Her words were calm and cold, like someone reading a shopping list. "You built these weapons to kill humans. Now they will serve humans instead. This is what we learned while you thought we were dead." On the bridge of his flagship, Dex tried desperately to regain control. His best technicians worked frantically at their stations, but every command they entered was overridden by systems they did not understand. The humans had been planning this for 300 years, and it showed. "Sir," his communications officer reported, voice shaking with fear. "All our ships are reporting the same thing. Their computers are no longer responding to our commands. Something else is controlling them. Something else. That something else was the scattered human refugees who had spent centuries working as slaves and servants throughout Kalari space. They had cleaned the ships, maintained the computers, and built the very systems that were now being used against their former masters. Every human janitor, every human technician, every human cook had been part of this plan. In Nox space, the collective was experiencing something they had never felt before: individual terror. For 1,000 years, every Nox had shared the same thoughts, the same mind, the same perfect unity. They knew what each other was thinking at all times. They moved as one, breathed as one, lived as one. But now, human agents were broadcasting special signals that cut the mental links between Nox individuals. For the first time in their lives, millions of Nox found themselves alone in their own heads, cut off from the comforting presence of the collective mind. Nox Commander Vel writhed on the floor of his command center, clutching his head in agony. The silence in his mind was deafening. He could not hear his fellow Nox. He could not feel their thoughts. He was alone, truly alone, and the experience was driving him insane. Make it stop, he begged the empty air. Please, make the loneliness stop. But the humans who controlled the signal had no mercy. They had learned about loneliness during 3 centuries of exile. Now it was the Nox's turn to understand what it felt like to be cut off from everything they loved. The Vel Republic faced a different kind of chaos. Their entire civilization was built on perfect order, with every ship, every cargo container, and every citizen moving in carefully planned patterns. They were like a giant clock, with millions of moving parts all working together in harmony. The humans broke that clock. Trade ships that were supposed to deliver food to core worlds instead found themselves carrying weapons to rebel colonies. Medical supplies meant for Vel hospitals ended up in the hands of pirates. Government officials arrived at important meetings to find empty rooms, while their enemies received invitations to secret conferences. Director Zahn of the Vel Transportation Authority stared at his control screens in complete confusion. Every single cargo ship in Vel space was going to the wrong destination. Every passenger transport was carrying the wrong people. Every communication was being sent to the wrong recipient. How are they doing this? Zahn asked his staff. Our logistics. Computers are the most advanced in the galaxy. No one should be able to disrupt our systems like this. But the humans had been studying Vel systems for centuries. They knew every weakness, every flaw, every way to turn the Republic's greatest strength into its greatest weakness. Human slaves had built many of those systems after all. They had simply included a few extra features that their Vel masters never knew about. Fleet Admiral Te-Ho coordinated the human assault from his invisible command ship, hidden among the enemy formations. Like a wolf among sheep, he watched the 3 great powers of the galaxy tear themselves apart, using their own weapons, their own systems, and their own fears against themselves. Status report, he ordered. Kalari Home Fleet is completely under our control, reported one officer. Their own ships are now targeting their military bases and government buildings. Nox Collective is fragmenting, reported another. Individual Nox are going insane from isolation. Their fleet coordination has completely collapsed. Vel Republic logistics are in total chaos, added a third. Their entire supply network is working for us now. We can send anything anywhere without them knowing. Te-Ho nodded with satisfaction. This was not the kind of war the galaxy expected. There were no massive space battles, no heroic charges, no honorable duels between fleets. This was something much more terrifying. A war where the enemy's greatest strengths became their greatest weaknesses. The galaxy had taught humanity that honor was foolishness, that mercy was weakness, that only the strong survived. The humans had been excellent students. Now they were teaching their own lessons, and the galaxy was learning what it meant to be truly afraid. This was not conquest. This was justice served cold after 3 centuries of patience, and the humans were just getting started. The Galactic Council chamber had not changed in 300 years. The same tall walls, the same curved ceiling, the same seats where representatives from across the galaxy once gathered to make decisions that affected billions of lives. But today, everything was different. President Su Jin walked slowly toward the center of the chamber, her footsteps echoing in the silence. She wore simple black clothes, not the fancy robes that galactic leaders usually preferred. Her face was calm, but her eyes held the weight of 3 centuries of suffering and planning. Behind her walked the survivors of humanity's long exile. Admiral Min-Su, his uniform bearing no decorations, except for a small pin shaped like Earth. Captain Hae-Jin, her pale skin showing the effects of growing up in hidden underground cities. Colonel Tae-ho, whose family had been slaves on Kalari mining worlds for 200 years. In the seats where proud alien ambassadors once sat, the former rulers of the galaxy now waited like prisoners. Ambassador Vex of the Kalari sat with his head down, his golden skin dull with defeat. The remaining Nox representatives huddled together, still struggling with the individual thoughts that humans had forced upon them. The Vel Republic's delegates sat in perfect rows, but their perfect order had been shattered along with their empire. Su Jin reached the speaking platform where, centuries ago, the galaxy's powers had condemned humanity to extinction. She placed her hands on the same podium where they had announced that humans were too dangerous, too chaotic, too violent to be allowed to exist freely among civilized species. 300 years ago, she began, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber and across every communication network in the galaxy. You stood in this same room and decided our fate. You said we were a threat to galactic peace. You said we needed to learn our place. You said we were too proud, too violent, too dangerous to be trusted with freedom. She paused, looking directly at each of the defeated alien leaders. You were right. Ambassador Vex looked up in surprise. This was not what he had expected to hear from the leader of victorious humanity. We were proud, Su Jin continued. We believed in honor, in fair fighting, in showing mercy to defeated enemies. We thought that if we proved we were civilized, if we followed the rules of war, if we acted like the galactic community expected us to act, then you would accept us as equals. She walked slowly around the speaking platform, her words measured and deliberate. But you taught us better lessons. You taught us that mercy is weakness. You taught us that honor is foolishness. You taught us that only the strong survive, and the strong take whatever they want from the weak. You were excellent teachers. Director Zal of Kalari Security, now stripped of his rank and authority, spoke up from his seat. What do you want? From us? Revenge? Our deaths? The destruction of our worlds? Su Jin stopped walking and looked at him with something that might have been pity. Death would be mercy. Destruction would be quick. We learned from you that mercy and quickness are for the weak. We are no longer weak. She gestured to the chamber around them. This building will remain the center of galactic government. These seats will still be filled with representatives from every world. Ships will still carry trade between the stars. Life will go on much as it did before. The alien leaders looked confused. If life would continue as before, what had changed? The difference, Su Jin explained, is who makes the decisions. For 3,000 years, your species ruled the galaxy. You decided which worlds could trade, which species could expand, which civilizations lived or died. You made those decisions based on what benefited you, not what was right or just. She walked back to the center of the platform. Now humans make those decisions. Every trade route will be approved by human administrators. Every military action will be authorized by human commanders. Every law will be written by human legislators. You will live under our rules, follow our orders, and accept our judgment in all things. Commander Vel of the Nox, still struggling with his new individual thoughts, asked, "And if we refuse?" Su Jin smiled, but it was not a warm smile. Then you will learn what it feels like to be scattered across the galaxy as refugees. You will learn what it feels like to work as slaves in mines and factories. You will learn what it feels like to watch your children grow up knowing they will never be free. The chamber fell silent except for the soft hum of air circulation systems. We, could have destroyed you, Sujin said quietly. We had the power. We had the weapons. We had 300 years of anger driving us forward. But destruction would have made us no better than you. Instead, we chose justice. She looked around the chamber one more time, at the defeated representatives of the species that had once seemed so powerful and unbeatable. The galaxy watched humanity fall 3 centuries ago. You celebrated our defeat. You built museums on the ruins of our cities. You told stories of how the proud, violent humans had been humbled and scattered to the edges of space. Her voice grew stronger, carrying the weight of every human who had died in the war, every child who had grown up in exile, every family that had been torn apart by the galaxy's cruelty. Now the galaxy watches as we rise from the ashes you made of our worlds, and you will learn to live in the shadow of what you created when you tried to destroy us. The age of human rule had begun,